Chapter 3 Desert Rose. Early the next morning, before dawn, Noah found himself wandering the empty streets of Amber Falls. There was a barber shop, a grocery store, and a hair salon on the same block. Across the street, there was another spot labeled General Store. All the store signs were hand-painted. Not a single car was on the road, driving or parked, and Noah stood on the sidewalk in his sheer black tank top and jeans, wondering if he'd just wandered into the 1950s. Downtown consisted of 2 blocks, the one he was on and the one across the street. In addition to the general store, the other block had a hair salon called Peggy's, with a woman's bouffant hairstyle making one of the G's, and a movie theater on the corner. According to the sign, it was showing The Blob at 7 o'clock. "What the hell?" he mumbled, eyeing the retro posters in the windows. The sun still hadn't peeked over the mountains when a neon open sign flickered in a window. It was a diner car with a white and turquoise Route 66 sign on the top. Noah was pretty much done exploring this Twilight Zone town. The plan was to get back to his bike and try to find a room. But his gut reminded him he hadn't eaten in close to a day, and even that had been some garbage snacks from the gas station. Route 66 apparently offered the best food in Nevada. That's what the tagline boasted anyway. It was likely bullshit, but it wasn't like he had a lot of options. Glancing down at his clothes and visible nipple rings, he had to grin. This would be interesting. When he opened the door, he immediately recognized the chick from the gas station. She was wearing the same uniform. Her eyes widened as she tucked a bobby pin in her hair, another pinched between her lips. In front of the counter, the position gave him a decent view of her body as her raised arms cinched the outfit under her breasts. Though he really wanted to, Noah held back from letting his gaze wander too much, opting to keep his eyes locked on hers as he spoke. "Morning." "Hi." The bobby pin fell from her mouth and clattered on the floor as she tried to catch it. She mouthed the curse, bending down to get it. "I saw the open sign." Noah stayed outside, noting it appeared she was alone. "Is it all right to come in?" She continued to stare at him as she straightened. "Technically, we don't open for another hour. I just always forget to turn on the sign, so I was just getting ahead of myself." Noah nodded, backing away to close the door. "It's fine, though," she said, waving him forward. "You can come on in." "Are you sure?" "Yes." She quickly rounded the counter. "Can I get you a coffee?" "I'll take it." Noah let the door close behind him as he stepped inside. He glanced around the place. It was just as 50s as the rest of the town. Was this whole thing intentional, or did they just never evolve? The sound of his boots was loud on the checkered floor, and even the door seemed loud. When he turned back, her eyes lurched up from his shoes. Noah didn't mind being alone with her one bit, but he understood her being weary of him. "How do you like it?" she asked. "With bacon and eggs," he answered honestly. Noah quickly grabbed his wallet. "I have cash." Lindy gestured towards a stool. "Have a seat. I'll find something for you." He did as she asked, saying, "Thanks." Lindy was thankful to have a moment to herself in the back. It took her a second to realize she should have given him his coffee first. The gas station guy with the hair. And the eyes. And everything else. What was he doing at the diner when it was barely 6 a.m.? She hadn't even been able to fix her hair properly when he opened the door. Talk about the absolute last person she ever thought she'd see again. Then he comes inside pretty much naked from the chest up. It didn't even make sense to her that a man would dress like that. Where had he come from? Was he in a rock band she didn't listen to? Whatever he did for a living, it was probably something dangerous. Her thoughts were rambling, completely rambling. Why the hell was her heart about to leap out of her chest? He was a customer, just some guy passing through town. She needed to calm down and get it together. Leftovers. She set a plate of steak, eggs, and pancakes in front of him less than 5 minutes later. It was piping hot and looked delicious. "On the house." "I told you I have." "No, don't even try it." She laid out a napkin and some silverware for him. "Would you like cream and sugar in your coffee?" "Sure." He looked up from the plate and she made sure to turn to the coffee machine. "How did you find us?" she asked, setting the coffee by his plate. He asked, his mouth already full. Lindy couldn't help but laugh. "I'm sorry. I'll let you eat." He made a sound of protest at her back as she turned to grab a fresh order pad from the shelf. "How'd I find you?" he repeated after swallowing. "Us" was what she said, but didn't try to correct him. "It's kind of an obscure town. It's definitely unique." He took a sip of coffee. "I'm on a cross-country trip." Lindy's brows rose. "Wow." When the plate held his attention again, she tried her hardest not to stare at his exposed chest. The thin layer of sheer was now a barrier to the artwork that ran along his skin. His chest was just as defined as his arms. After a subtle double take, she realized his nipples were pierced, little studs resting on the sides of each one. While he drank his coffee, she noticed the dark image on his right hand, a scorpion. Lindy must have looked like an 80-year-old woman to this man. Her shoes were from Bonnie's thrift shop, her uniform was shapeless, and her hair was finally in the bun she was trying to make when he startled her. All she needed was a string of pearls and a pair of heavy, thick-rimmed glasses. "Lindy?" he said, reading her name tag. "Yes." She offered him her Route 66 smile and ignored the jolt at suddenly hearing her name from his mouth. "Noah. It's nice to meet you." She said this at the same time he put down his fork and held out his large hand for her to shake. "It's nice to meet you" was supposed to be the end of the formalities. Lindy took her opposite hand and reached for his. He didn't hold her hand too tight, but he didn't have to. Her hand might as well have been her whole body in that instant. Noah's hand was firm, warm, and somehow soft and rough at the same time. "Likewise," he said. His index finger rested on the pulse of her wrist, and she didn't know if she wanted to grasp tighter or snatch her hand away. Thankfully, he let her go. But his fingers brushed hers one more time before they were completely separated. "The sun's finally coming up." Lindy glanced over his wide shoulder, grateful as hell for the distraction. "Why do you come here an hour early?" he asked. "To stock. Sometimes I thaw out food for the day. Sometimes I check inventory and put in orders." "On top of waitressing?" Lindy shrugged. "When you've been here a while, you pick up on things." "Sounds like you run the place to me." Lindy shook her head. "No, that's Mitch. He's the owner." "I hope he pays you well for all your work." Lindy just made a noise with a half smile. "I'm guessing you'll be on your way after today?" "What makes you say that?" Lindy watched the sun burn a line across the mountains right beneath the half-raised blinds. Leaning on the counter, she stretched her back. "By now, you've seen what our town has to offer." She rested on her elbows and turned her head to him on a short laugh. "It isn't much." If her skin looked like caramel, did it taste like it too? Noah chewed on his last bite while he thought about it. He imagined a scenario where she would lock the diner door and show him exactly what she had to offer, and he was much more interested in that than the town. Noah knew it was best if he didn't think about it too much, else he'd have an awkward walk back to his bike, hidden on the outskirts of town. "I don't know," he said, resting his fork in his plate. "I'm curious now." Lindy giggled. Lindy's giggle bubbled up from her mouth as she straightened. "Not about this place." "What if I was?" he questioned. "What would be the harm in that?" Her eyes widened a bit, and he could see she was considering how to proceed. "No offense," she held up her hand, "but you're a little different." Noah grinned. "Okay." Lindy picked up his plate. "Amber Falls doesn't do different." "What about you, Lindy? Do you do different?" The question was on the tip of his tongue, but he was doing his best to tread lightly. She went to the back with the dishes. While she was gone, he grabbed a sheet of paper off the pad she left on the counter. "You know a decent spot I can get a room?" he asked when she returned. Lindy didn't hide her surprise. "Did you not hear a thing I said?" Noah smelled something sweet over the lingering scent of coffee and wondered if she was wearing perfume. Something else for him to taste. "I heard everything you said." Her face was skeptical. "And I heard L.A. is really nice." "I'm not interested in L.A., he admitted. He tried to stare at her, but despite being directly across from him, she refused to look up from the tabletop. Noah's hand inched to reach up and touch her face, but he kept them occupied beneath the counter with the loose sheet of paper. "There's a spot on the east end of town. Lil' Apple." "Lil' Apple," he repeated. She pulled back from the counter with a nod. "It's bright red like an apple, but it's shaped like a brick. You can't miss it." "I've got some walking to do then." "Where's your bike?" "Around," he answered. "Looks like the town's finally waking up." Noah turned around on the stool to see someone opening up the grocer's on the next block. "I better grab some extra coffee filters," she mumbled suddenly. "We always run out." By the time she returned, Noah was gone. It happened so fast she almost thought she had hallucinated him. Except on the counter, a paper rose sat where he'd been eating, and underneath it was a crisp $20 bill. Lindy lifted the rose, staring at it all intricate corners, before glancing at her blank order pad. She'd never seen anything like it. Holding it delicately in her palm, she reached down and picked up the 20 with her other hand. Whole shifts she'd worked and never saw $20 in tips. Lindy quickly tucked it in her pocket. 2 times she'd met him, and on both he'd made her day a little better. On a low sigh, she held the paper gently to her chest. "Noah," she said aloud. She just wanted to hear it on the air. That man was long gone, and she knew it. There was no way he'd go to Lil' Apple. Red like an apple, shaped like a brick. Noah shut off his bike next to the office of the motel. Lil' Apple Motel, if it even qualified as that. There might have been 4 rooms. Noah raised his sunglasses before dismounting. After the walk back to his bike and taking the long way around to get here, he was in need of a shower and a change of clothes. The sight of him pulling up might scare a grandma or two. Hopefully he could get a room without any issues. "Hello?" He tried to lighten the sound of his boots as he walked into the office, and he'd taken his wallet out to cut down on any sudden movements. "Yeah?" The young kid looked up from his phone. "I'd like a room," Noah said quickly as the kid's eyes widened. "What?" he asked, pulling his huge headphones back. Noah hated repeating himself. "I said I'd like a room. How much a night?" The kid furrowed his brow. 25, I'm pretty sure." Noah quickly pulled out the cash. "You say 25, you better be sure." He placed the money on the table. The lanky kid continued to stare up at him from behind the counter, ignoring the money. "We usually don't get customers, so that's why I had a hard time remembering." "How do you stay open if you don't have customers?" The young man didn't seem to have an answer, so Noah left it alone. He slid a key across the table. "All the plumbing works, I hope, and I'm not going to have to shoot rats half the night," Noah asked as he lifted the key. "The room's on the far end. It's clean 'cause I did it myself and rat-free." Noah nodded. "I'm gonna hold you to that." "Sure." The kid's voice cracked when he went through the door, and Noah was tempted to look back.